I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online, real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hello, everyone. I'm Therese Bottomly, editor of the Oregonian and OregonLive. This is Beat Check with the Oregonian. Today, I'm talking to 2 newsroom editors who have overseen aspects of our response to actions by President Donald Trump. Jamie Goldberg, who's one of our political editors, and Brad Schmidt, watchdog editor. Brad, Jamie, welcome back to Beat Check.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
So, Jamie, let's start with you. And I want to preface, first of all, the conversation by reminding listeners that the Oregonian and OregonLive are primarily local news sources. We don't see a lot of traffic on national news stories on OregonLive. We do like to include the highlights, of course, but our bread and butter really is news that readers can't find anywhere else. And we know from years of research that readers get their national and world news from television or national websites. But we are interested in the local effects of the Trump administration and President Trump's orders and policy changes. So with that in mind, Jamie, let's start with some lawsuits Oregon has joined. Our new Attorney General, Dan Rayfield, has had not much time to settle in before things got pretty interesting pretty quick.
Yeah, he's definitely been busy. Let's see. Oregon has joined other states in filing suits against multiple Trump executive orders so far. That includes ones that slash the amount of National Institutes of Health research funding that can be used for overhead costs, that gave Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency access to Treasury Department data, an order that blocked federal funding to hospitals that provide gender-affirming care, Trump's ban on birthright citizenship, and Trump's attempt to freeze federal grants and loans. All of those orders have at least temporarily been blocked by judges as they move through the courts, except the gender-affirming care order, and in that matter, there's a hearing set.
So that is a lot for right out of the gate. And we'll talk a little bit about what might be Trump's strategy there. But what about Oregon's Governor, Tina Kotek? What steps has she taken in response to the Trump administration's actions?
Yeah, I'd say she's been a little bit less vocal than some other Democratic governors across the country so far, but she did convene a meeting in December with state officials to prepare them for how Oregon would respond to Trump's actions. And she has promised to safeguard Oregon's values. Following Trump's order to freeze the federal grants, she held a joint press conference with Rayfield where they both criticized the overreach of power and both promised that Oregon would do everything in its own power to fight back.
So Oregon did vote for Kamala Harris. Oregon statewide offices and legislature dominated by Democrats. But, you know, a lot of the state is more conservative and Republican outside of the Willamette Valley. So really interesting to watch how this plays out. It's been a pretty unusual first few weeks for any president, as we mentioned. And I want to just quote from Brian Stelter, a media analyst at CNN, who writes that he thinks this is an intentional strategy to kind of flood the zone. He wrote, "Every new president generates a lot of news, but something feels different this time. To the delight of his fans and dismay of his detractors, Trump has made so many pronouncements and held so many press Q&As that he has been all but impossible to avoid. White House aides have indicated the president's ubiquity is part of a strategy to impress Republican voters and disorient Democratic opponents. So, Jamie, how do you pick and choose what we're going to cover from a local perspective?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, our priority has to be covering Oregon. There are plenty of great national journalists out there covering the Trump administration, and I don't really see it as our role to try to match what they're doing on the national level, especially because that would come at the expense of covering key stories that are happening on the ground within the state. That said, we do plan to and will cover Trump's orders as they impact Oregon. I think the key there is that, as I mentioned before, many of these Trump's orders are currently tied up in the courts. And so we're trying to balance not reacting to every order, but rather waiting to see what's actually going to go into effect and how Oregonians are going to be impacted before we jump on every single announcement coming out of the White House. Because I think if we did, that really would be a disservice to our readers here, because we would be taking resources away from covering what's happening on the ground here in Oregon.
Yeah, it really has been a bit of a whipsaw. The executive order comes out, then people go to court, and then a judge intervenes, and around we go. So, Brad, let's talk a little bit about your team's activities here in response. Your reporters have chased down rumors about immigration arrests or raids, and that was one of Trump's promises, to crack down on illegal immigration and to have deportations. So what have your reporters been hearing?
Yeah, so in the days following Trump's inauguration, we came across several unverified social media posts claiming aggressive action by immigration officials. One claim that kids were questioned at a light rail stop at Clackamas Town Center. Another claim that vans full of immigration officers had stormed Portland State University. Another claim that ICE officers were questioning people at Winco Foods near Happy Valley. And yet another claim that people had been detained at La Tapatia supermarket in Gresham. None of that appeared to be true, according to the officials that we spoke to. TriMet noted that such posts appeared to be about creating fear in the community. That's not to say that nothing's happening. We have heard from community groups with firsthand knowledge of what's happening on the ground. And at least one person in Salem was arrested at their home and taken to Tacoma to be detained at the federal facility there. So when we hear tips, we jump on them and try and find out the accuracy of them.
So that's been really a concern in advocacy groups and immigrant communities around ICE activity, and some of the the traditional places people might feel safe, like churches or schools. I see that organizations have had to kind of come out and make statements about what they will or won't do. But when you look at all this flurry of activities, what are your guiding principles about deciding, as Jamie said, we can't cover everything. So how do we decide what to cover when things are flying around so fast?
Yeah, we listen to the tips. We seek confirmation from official sources and people who are involved. And we do our best to determine what is and what isn't true, evaluating everything on its merits. And then we determine if, how, and when it warrants coverage. Going back to my previous comments, we checked out each of the social media posts in real time and determined that they appeared to be false. But rather than writing 4 separate stories about each allegation, we waited until we had something of a critical mass, and then we did a step back story that looked more about, what social media and misinformation is out there and how people can evaluate what they're seeing on social media, and where they can go in the community to try and get support if they need it, and what advocates and leaders in the community were saying about the importance of not getting sucked into the fear, being rational in what you're hearing, and obviously having your guard up as needed, but not believing everything that you see on social media.
Yeah, and just because we checked these out and they didn't appear to be true, we know that there is immigration activity going on, around the country. Our sister paper in Cleveland Plain Dealer in Cleveland.com, the editor wrote a column about chasing rumors and did find through the courts that some folks had been detained. So we know there is activity going on, but it's really hard to sort through when you hear so many rumors about ICE, showing up places or patrolling in places they don't usually. I just know there's a lot of concern and confusion out there. Now, both of you, the issue of sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. So Oregon is a sanctuary state. Portland is a sanctuary city. What does that mean exactly? And what has Trump said about how he's going to address jurisdictions that claim that status?
Yeah, so Trump recently signed an executive order that seeks to deny federal funding from sanctuary cities. And the Portland City Council passed a resolution in 2017 affirming that Portland is a sanctuary city, which essentially means that no city money or staff should be used to aid in federal immigration enforcement, except as required by law. And so in response to Trump's executive order, the city of Portland joined with San Francisco and other jurisdictions in filing a lawsuit challenging the order last week. And Portland has a lot to lose here. City Attorney Robert Taylor said that the Department of Justice has awarded Portland more than $10 million in grants that have yet to be dispersed. So those funds would go to things like Portland's police body camera program, community violence intervention efforts, and an initiative to process a years-long backlog of unprocessed rape kits. So that's currently going to go through the court system. But Portland was part of a similar lawsuit during Trump's term. And that situation, the courts did rule that Trump wasn't allowed to deny funding to sanctuary cities. This case will have to go through this time around and see what happens.
So lots going on. We haven't even touched on tariffs, which, as an export heavy state, are important to Oregonians as well. I'm sure we'll deal with that in the future as well. But stay tuned to OregonLive.com/politics for what is sure to be a busy year. And with that, we'll call it a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to Beat Check with the Oregonian. If you like this show, give us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find the show. Tell a friend, help spread the word. The best way to support our journalism and stories like this one is with a subscription to Oregon Live. You can do that at OregonLive.com/pod support. Until next time.